We started learning the dinim of Hamotzi. We learned you have to hold it in both hands by a Hamotzi because the tamitz is connected to it. You shouldn't cut off too big of a piece or too small of a piece. Okay, the last thing we're learning is that when you have a table, you're supposed to bring salt on the table. Why? Because the table is likened to the mizbeach, to the altar, and every korban, the Torah says they brought salt. Therefore, the custom is, and like we said, it's not only Shabbos. People only do Shabbos. It's really every time you eat bread. Some people have a minhag, they put salt onto the bread. According to Kabbalah, you dip the bread into the salt. The custom is you dip the bread into the, whether it's matzah or challah or bread, anything hamotzi. You dip into salt 3 times. Why do you dip into the salt 3 times? So it's brought down that melach, mem lamed ches, equals 78. Yud kei vav kei equals 26. 3 times yud kei vav kei is 78. So therefore you dip the challah or the bread into salt 3 times. And Kabbalistically you don't put the salt on the bread like many people do. The main thing is to have salt on the bread. But Kabbalah, you dip the bread into the salt.
So if you have the whole challah, you're saying the whole bracha on the challah, you just put the whole challah is enough, or every cut you do, you have to put in the salt?
No, every person, when you cut challah, say for every person should dip their own piece of bread into the salt.
But once you say bracha, you do once, no?
And then you make a bracha, then you cut up the challah, and then we'll learn how to do that also. Then when you give out the challah or the bread, whatever it is, everybody takes their own bread and dips it into salt. Or else you could dip it into salt for them and then pass it out.
But if you don't, it's okay? Or since you did, as he said, if you did it just for the main...
No, the inyan is that every person should, because every person's, it's like a carbon for each individual person. So each individual person should have salt. Many people have a minhag, if there's no salt on the table, they'll dip it into something that has salt in it, which is basically everything. In other places in halacha it says, what happens if there's no salt but you have sugar? So they dip it into sugar. It's not as good as salt, but it says if there's no salt, you have sugar, you dip it into sugar. Okay, next is like this. Next is what's called Hilchos Suda, the etiquette of the meal. That's what's called Hilchos Suda, the dinam of Suda. So we learned already this din. There's a din that if somebody owns animals or birds that you're obligated to feed, you have to feed them before you feed yourself. It's a pasuk in Chumash, in the Shema, V'nosati Esav b'sotcho levehemtecha. Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'll give grass in the fields for your animals. Then it says, V'yochalta v'savata. Then you'll eat and become full. So the Torah clearly says, first you give the animals to eat, and then you give the person to eat. By drinking, the Gemara says, and Shulchan Aruch says, it's the other way. People drink first, and then the animals. Where do we see this in Chumash? When Eliezer came to Rivka by the well, and he said, check it out if this is the right girl or not. So what did Rivka tell him? I'm going to give you to drink, and I'll also give to drink to your camels. So over there, Rivka first gave the people, and then the animals. So you see, by drinking, people come first. But that's only, by the way, of animals that you're obligated to feed. Animals that you want to throw some bread to the birds, or challah to the birds, then you don't have to feed them first, because they're not your obligation to feed. We're talking about animals that you own, that you have an obligation to eat. Okay.
For example, for dogs, you have dog food for them, and it's already there for them.
So that's called giving them food first.
So there's no obligation then when you're eating to come and to give them if they want something.
If the food is there for them, they can go eat it. They're being fed first. What they eat is their problem.
Well, like Shabbos,
yeah.
you can't feed the wild animals, right?
You can't feed on Shabbos. You're not allowed to feed animals that don't belong to you. You have to feed animals that do belong to you. The only exception to this is a dog, but otherwise, birds and all those things. It says people have a minhag on Shabbos Shira to throw a buckwheat to the birds. So the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. You have to do it erev Shabbos. Because on Shabbos, the birds don't belong to you. You're not obligated to feed them. Animals, you're not obligated to feed. You're not allowed to feed on Shabbos.
You're not allowed to. It's forbidden, right?
Yeah. You're not allowed to means it's forbidden. We said a dog. Because the dogs had a special schus. Okay. Next. A person should not eat or drink like derech rava sunos is to classify this simply like people grab food by a kiddush. That's what you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to eat in a way that, like, as if you're starving, you haven't eaten for 10 years and you're grabbing food. You know, Jews, when it comes to a kiddush, you think they haven't eaten for years. So you're not allowed to eat that way. You're not allowed to eat standing. You're not allowed to drink standing. Your table should be clean and neat. Well, the world says you get fat feet. The world says, I don't know, maybe in the Persian world not, but in the American world they say if you eat standing you can get fat feet because all the food goes into the... But it's not etiquette of eating. Etiquette of eating, you sit.
But it's not asur, is it?
It says in Shulchan Aruch you shouldn't eat sitting or sitting. Everybody does. Especially drink, everybody does. But the table should be clean.
But it's not asur, is it?
It says you shouldn't. Shouldn't means you shouldn't. Also than that.
Sometimes you go to,
Another important thing also people don't keep. And again, some people say today the whole etiquette changed because people don't have the same etiquette they used to have. But Lavashal, according to halacha, you're not allowed to bite into a food that's a kibetza, which is 2 ounces. Which means, according to this halacha, if you have a sandwich, 2 slices of rye with something in the middle, tuna, egg, a deli, whatever it may be, you're not allowed to bite into it. Because it's big, it's a kibetza, it's 2 ounces, it's big. And biting into it looks like you're a hungry person, a glutton. Yes. Or they say in Yiddish, hafreser.
Except for by the Seder?
Yeah, that's no choice by the matzah over there.
But hamburger is like, it's more than 2 ounces. Like any hamburger, you go anywhere.
So a lot of people, by the way, I said, today people are not too makbid in it, and they say that because everybody does it, but it's really not the right thing to do. What people do, if they have a sandwich, proper people will cut the sandwich in half. And then you don't...
Even if you cut in half, still more than 2 ounces.
No, not of the bread. It's not true. They cut it in half.
You can eat in public or in a car?
In a car, you're allowed to eat. We discussed the other night about something else that came up. The Gemara says, "Eichel b'shuk." The Gemara says in Kedushin, "Eichel b'shuk daima lekelev u'pasol leidus." Somebody eats in the street, they're like a dog, and they're not kosher to testify. Why aren't they kosher to be a witness? Because they have no human dignity. And the Torah says to be a witness, you understand human dignity. But Taisa says that only applies to something that people usually don't eat in the street. Like, for instance, we mentioned the other night, if you have, let's say, eating a hot dog and bun, yeah? Walking in the street eating a hot dog and bun is improper etiquette according to halacha. But you're eating a little candy or some little thing, it's not a big deal. But if you eat something that normally people don't walk in the street eating, it's improper. This is not Kabbalah. This is Pashut eating etiquette. Eating is a part of serving Hashem. We don't live to eat, we eat to live. If you're eating to live, because you want to live the way a Jew is supposed to live, so eating is part of Avodas Hashem. In fact, it says in Svarim, why did Hashem make the desire of eating so powerful? You know, people like to eat, right? Why did Hashem make that desire by people so strong? Because if not, people wouldn't eat. And if people wouldn't eat, all the sparks of Kedusha that we learn in Chassidus are in the food wouldn't be elevated. So how does Hashem get to elevate the sparks that's in the food? He makes people have an appetite to eat. And then they're able to elevate the sparks if they eat it proper. There's a pasuk we say in Haidu, it's in Tilm, we say Haidu Friday night before Paschalio. Reivim gam tzmeim, nafshem bahem tesataf. Simply means hungry, the ravim, the hungry, they're thirsty, the soul is enclosed within them. So the Friedrich Rebbe teaches, Reivim gam tzmeim, why is a person hungry? Why is a person thirsty? Because nafshem bahem tesataf, because the neshama is in them, and the neshama wants to elevate all those sparks. So therefore you have to be hungry in order to be able to elevate the sparks of Kedusha. That's what. So eating is actually a part of Avodas Hashem. If it's Avodas Hashem, it has to be done like a mensch.
Some people can eat in a public, in a car.
In a car is not public. If he's driving a convertible, and he's sitting there, yeah, that's not proper. But cutting off somebody isn't either.
Right, but
But everybody cuts people off also.
it's normal in Beverly Hills.
All over.
No, I think the Rambam writes the Talmud Chacham, even something Ara shouldn't eat in public.
Talmid Chacham shouldn't eat in public, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be eating in public. What do they do when they're at a meal that they're eating? It means in a public place, it means not in the proper decor and the proper menschlichkeit. Okay. Now, there is a Ksaf Sefer that holds, by the way, that Shabbos, because it's a mitzvah to eat, you can eat before your animals. During the week, which is not a mitzvah to eat, so then you have to feed the animals first. But Ksaf Sefer writes that if Shabbos, where it's a mitzvah to eat, so then you can even do it before the animals. Okay, next is like this. Okay, also if it's a cup of, this also depends. If you have a cup of drink, in Shulchan Aruch speaks about a cup of wine, you shouldn't drink the whole cup of one shot. Because again, it looks like a guzzler. More than 2 times, it looks like haughtiness. But again, this is not Kabbalah. It all depends how it looks. It's a bottom line, you have to eat like a mensch. Okay? You should, no, because sometimes you sip it, it's like a sign of haughtiness. Obviously, if it's hot tea, you sip it. So you're not going to drink it in 2 times. But then, it again, it's not Kabbalah. It's very simple. You have to eat and drink like a mensch. That's all.
Kiddush, you have to drink a revi'ah.
That's a different thing. By dollar cases, you have to drink. By Kiddush, you have to drink more than a revi'ah. But again, you're still not drinking the whole cup. Except by Seder, you have to. Okay? You know, if you ever watch people eat matzah by the Seder, if they're doing it right, it doesn't look very proper etiquette either. But that's a mitzvah. It's a whole different story. Okay, there's certain din in Shulchan Aruch, it says like this. You're not allowed to do things, I'm going to speak American language. You're not allowed to do certain things that will gross people out. You're not allowed to gross people out. So for instance, it says in Shulchan Aruch, you shouldn't bite into a food and then put it on the table. It grosses some people out. You know, it's not etiquette to bite something and then put it on the table.
Double dipping?
It's a different issue.
Now, you also shouldn't drink. Some people, they're very upset when they drink from somebody else's mouth. They don't like drinking from somebody else's mouth. So therefore, halachically, you're not allowed to drink and then give it to somebody else to drink because, again, it might gross him out. So you have to put it down. If he wants to take it, he'll take it. If he doesn't want to take it, he won't take it. Okay, that, I read about Shirayim, it's a whole different story. Okay, a person should not be, in halacha it's called a captain b'achilasa. You shouldn't be stingy in eating. Because then the guests at the table will feel very uncomfortable eating because they see the way, you know, you're too cheap with the food. You don't want, it looks like you don't want people to eat, so then they'll feel embarrassed to eat. And then it's not called achnasas orchim. Now, another thing is, you're not allowed to talk in the middle of eating. That means while you have food in your mouth, by the way. There's no food in your mouth. In the country, we learned in Pirkei Avos, you have to have a Dvar Torah at the Shulchan, right? Dabar Elazar Shulchan. So, but if you, while you're chewing, you're not allowed to speak Torah. Even Torah, you're not allowed to speak. Why? So the Gemara said that's mamish sakana. Why is it dangerous? Because then the the windpipe will be on top of the food pipe, and then, because when you're talking, the windpipe is open, then the food will go down the wrong pipe. And then, God forbid, you can choke and come to danger, so you're not allowed to. Therefore, even if you have food in your mouth and somebody sneezes, you're not supposed to say, Gesundheit, bless you, you know, whatever people say when they sneeze.
Or say amen.
Huh?
Say amen.
Not while you're eating, no. No. The best thing is, after you swallow, then you can say Dvar Torah or whatever it is. Okay, you have Shabbos and Yom Tov say Shir Amalos before benching. During the week you say Al Nar Bava before benching. And it says like this, you should be very careful if you're learning at the table to make sure there's no crumbs going into the sefer. Why? Two things. First, you have a Pesach issue. Then you'll have chametz in it. But even that, it says, because when you have food in a book, so you get bookworms. And then they eat up the book. They eat up the sefer. So then it's actually disrespectful to the sefer. So if you're learning during eating, you have to make sure that it's all clear.